Passive Intelligence Gathering, Part 1. In this nugget, we'll be addressing passive intelligence gathering, and this will be Part 1. We'll start off with just a simple overview of what our purpose is with passive intelligence gathering and some general sources that we can use. And then we'll move on to taking a look at some specific passive intelligence sources in this nugget, and then we'll continue looking at some other PI sources in our next nugget. I remember when I was a kid growing up, I used to really love to watch those detective shows like McCloud, the Snoop Sisters, Macmillan and Wife, the Hardy Boys. Okay, I didn't just admit to that last one. But in any case, I used to like to watch those. Banachek, what's another one? The Rockford Files, that's a good one. And remember, Jim Rockford would often do his detective work, much like Magnum P.I. did, by just following people around in his car, in that gold car that was so inconspicuous. And, he's following from only like 10 yards back, and yet he expects not to be seen. Well, in any case, a lot of the detective work that they used to do would be a lot of that legwork, and they'd have to go down to the records office at the city to look information up on people. They would have to get some inside contact with the phone company to do a reverse directory of a phone number, or they'd get in touch with Dennis Becker, Jim Rockford's friend at the police station, who was his detective inside source that would give him inside information. Well, nowadays, it's significantly easier to do that kind of detective work, and certified ethical hackers will do a lot of that same exact type of work that a PI would do, except that we don't follow people around in cars anymore because, after all, at today's gas prices, who can afford to do that? But we don't really need to, because passive intelligence gathering, which is what we're going to do in the early stages of a hack, is so easy to do using a lot of information that is readily available to us. With passive intelligence, what really is it? Well, it's pretty much a preliminary step in performing a hack, and there's a couple of different approaches. If you're just trying to practice hacking, well, you could do that preliminary step by looking for broad companies out there to see who has vulnerabilities, and you can use Google for a lot of this. And then the other approach would be to already have a company that you've contracted to be able to do a security pen test on, and you can then narrow down your scope of attack on that company by using passive intelligence. This is part of footprinting, which is where we're going to do our intelligence gathering. Now, footprinting is a broader scope, and it can involve things that could be traced back directly to you. But passive intelligence is just that. It's passive. Most of what we do is not easily traceable to us particularly. It's not distinctly hacking, in other words. It's stuff that any other public person out there who's trying to look up information on a company might also do. Maybe you're a financial analyst and you want to learn more about a specific company and how they're performing financially for their upcoming IPO. Well, we might do a lot of that same information, do record searches and do searches against corporate filings and that kind of thing. So most of what we're going to be looking at is really public information that anybody can access. Well, let's take a look at some of these passive intelligence sources, or these private investigator sources, if you want to think of it that way, because that's really what we're doing here. Most of the sources we'll look for is on the internet, and you'll come up with a bookmarked list probably of a whole bunch of different sources you can use to track down information about individuals or companies or something like that. One of the things you can do there is to just use public web pages. That can really give up a wealth of information that the company just makes publicly available. For example, maybe you're trying to hack into ceh-ep6.wmv. Well, you've been going out this for weeks, and they're pretty tight. You can't seem to get in there, at least not so far. So what you will do instead is you go to their public website, and you see that they have a partners page on their website, and it lists all the partners that they do business with. Maybe one of the partners they do business with is a distributor that distributes their product, and that's abc.com. Well, abc.com is a smaller company. It's not as big and corporate as xyz.com, and it's not as much of a tightly run ship as XYZ, so their security is a little bit looser. As a result, abc.com, well, they have access to the SQL database on xyz.com, which by itself is pretty secure, and you can't seem to get into it here. But maybe you can get into abc.com, and as a result, work your way into their SQL database through this kind of backdoor method. And you see, you're able to learn about abc.com by just a simple link that appears on xyz.com's web pages. You can also learn what phone exchanges that they use. For example, maybe the company uses 602, and I'm going to use the Hollywood numbers here, 555, 12XX. And those are the numbers that they seem to use. When you look at the About Us or the Contact Us web page, then it gives a number in this series. Well, what you could do then is just use a word dialer, which is an automated method for going through a series of phone numbers, and you could say start with 12XX, 1201, 1202, 1203, and what your war dialer will typically do is it's going to look for a modem signal. When it hits a modem signal, that's probably going to be a RAS server of some kind, or some kind of a way of remotely accessing a server that is the last-ditch resort that an administrator can use to access that server when the VPN is down. Now, we don't use these very much anymore, and a lot of corporations have tried to shy away from them, but there's still plenty of them out there. And if you were able to dial in like that, then you could potentially circumvent their many multi-thousand-dollar VPN system or their multi-thousand-dollar router system and all those firewalls that they've put up, because they've left open an analog phone line to a specific server that they may have even forgotten about, because after all, now that they're on VPNs, they don't really think about dial-in very much anymore. Kind of forgot that that phone line was even there. Another thing you do if you're willing to do this painstakingly is you can just dial these numbers manually, a series of them, if there's not too large of an exchange, and you can, maybe you're looking for a specific individual. Maybe you're looking for the corporate president's extension or his secretary's extension. Well, they don't normally make that stuff available just on the public internet because they'll get slammed with phone calls. Just start going through them until someone says, this is Mr. Johnson's office who you're looking for. So you might do something like that. Also, you can look for job openings. A lot of corporations, even large ones, will post their job openings on their public web page because, after all, they need to make that information publicly available so that they can get qualified applicants. You also might want to look for key personnel. These would be people that have specific knowledge about the company that perhaps you can do a social engineering work with, where you can derive information from these people. Now, social engineering is another topic we'll cover in another video here, but this is something where you might call that person up and try to ask them information about their company. A good example of that might be maybe they have a HR page or a director of human resources or something like that. Well, typically you can't get directly through to the director of human resources, but you can at least call the number or email and get some foothold on who you should contact for specific kinds of job openings. Once you do that, then you can say, hey, I see you're looking for a network engineer. What kind of skills do they need to have? A better way to do that even still would be to not even call anybody, because when you call someone, you take yourself out of the realm of passive intelligence gathering. So instead what you might do is just go to their web page and try to mine for information there, again, using publicly available information. For example, I haven't actually done this. Let's go to careers here. The reason I go to Canon's website is because I'm a Nikon photographer, and Canon is kind of the competition. So I'm going to go to Canon here, which makes great products, by the way. I'm just kind of using this as an example. So we go to the careers item, and here it says how to apply. That should be interesting. Oh, good. I can search job opportunities. And I can search for, if I'm trying to work against an office here in San Jose, maybe I've got a CEH contract with Canon to be able to do that. Then I would check that location. Otherwise, I'll just do all of them, I guess. Then I could do information technology and do a search here, and it shows me some information about what they're looking for. Well, look, here's a senior systems analyst for Oracle database. This gives me a little bit of information about the kind of Oracle that they're using. It tells me what version of Oracle they're using, what modules they use, so that might reveal certain kinds of information. They're using Unix shell scripting, which isn't uncommon by any means. None of this is really uncommon, but it gives me an idea. Maybe I'm looking for specific vulnerabilities, or maybe it will allow me to search for specific vulnerabilities against a version of a software product or something. You get the idea here. So there's quite a lot of information about that one. What's another good one? Well, a network engineer. Now let's take a look at that. So here I would get information about what kind of network devices they use. Obviously, they use a lot of Cisco, just like just about everybody else does. And of course, they're working with firewalls, and that's not uncommon at all. But now I know a little bit of information. They're using VPNs. Again, they're working with exposure to NT and Oracle. NT, that sounds kind of old. They must just mean NT Technologies. Hopefully they're working 2000 or 2003 or something like that. Look, they have corporate wireless networks. A lot of vulnerabilities with wireless networks. That might give me some other information that I would like to know about. Maybe I can war drive their building and see if I can find anything. Again, it's unlikely that I will with Canon because I'm pretty sure they're pretty tight. But just an example. Other things that we can look for here. Oh, good. Here's Checkpoint. We don't know exactly what they're doing with Checkpoint. Checkpoint makes a lot of different products, but that might give me a foothold again in knowing what kind of vulnerabilities to look for. So these are just examples of the kinds of things I'll look for and the kind of job postings that I can search against that might reveal key information. So again, those vulnerabilities can be easily found at times. For example, if you use 3Com equipment, well, for a lot of 3Com equipment, there's a God password that you can always get in to the 3Com equipment with. The same is also true of some of the older Linksys equipment back before they got bought by Cisco. Well, some of the circuitry in there has a God password that if you enter it into the interface, then you can get into those devices. Here's another example. You could go to websites that do job searches, monster.com, or here I'm at dice.com, and here's a job posting. And for this specific company that we would be looking at here, they use Juniper equipment. They use Cisco equipment. There's a recent hack against Cisco routers that's out there that in fact has caused a lot of legal trouble. And the guy that came up with it was supposed to speak at DEF CON this year, and he had to cancel because of legal issues, because Cisco was really putting the heat on with him. But there's even a video out on the internet that shows exactly how he gets around some of these Cisco devices. Well, again, if you become familiar with that kind of thing, then you would know how to work around potentially some of these kinds of different Cisco devices. Another great source of information is disgruntled employees. For example, I remember years ago I worked for a large corporation, and we did not want to get sold. We had all just gotten some options that had specific stipulations on these stock options, and we had to stay with this company for a certain period of time in order to make the options worth anything. Well, so we were concerned that we would get sold because we read about this at finance.yahoo.com, and there was rumors going around. We don't know who was posting them because there was an alias involved, but it might have been a disgruntled employee who was higher up in the chain and who had a lot more stock options than I did. Well, we finally asked the CEO of the company where we worked if we were going to be sold, because he came to town for a large meeting, a large corporate meeting. So someone stuck their hand up in the air and said, "Hey, are we going to be sold?" He goes, "No, we are not for sale. We are not going to sell this company." 2 weeks later, we were sold to the highest bidder, and we lost all our stock options. Or to be honest, we didn't lose 100% of it, but they were not worth anywhere near what they would have been worth otherwise, so we took a big hit for that. Well, after that, believe me, there were a lot of disgruntled employees from that company, and what they would post on the internet was sometimes just juicy gossip, other times could have potentially been compromising information. So you can now find that kind of information in things like weblogs, also known as blogs, or news groups such as the finance.yahoo.com. There might be revealing information about what a company is going to do, whether it looks like someone's trying to take it over, a hostile takeover, whether there's the key executives are selling their stock or something like that. Here's another good example of that. A few years ago, an employee at Microsoft, actually it was a contractor, I think, at Microsoft who worked in their graphic arts division, happened to be going to work, and when he saw this picture going on at the Microsoft loading dock. So he took out a digital camera, snapped a picture of it. Do you see what's going on here? Yeah, Microsoft ordering a whole bunch of G5 Macintosh computers. Well, as a result of this guy snapping this picture and posting it on his weblog, he got fired the very next day. You can bet there might have been a disgruntled employee there as well. So some very revealing information can be found in weblogs. Then there's also a couple of websites out there. Here's just a couple of them. There's one called internalmemos.com, which shows, internal memos from corporations that are not meant to be publicly available, but they, of course, get leaked out on the internet. Can show some revealing information. And there's this one, which, of course, I haven't spelled out for obvious reasons here. But this is another one where you'll have disgruntled employees or information about a company that's done somebody wrong, and maybe as a result, this employee is going to release information that they wouldn't have otherwise. So again, all these are good sources for passive intelligence gathering. You're not actively looking for this in a way that you can be identified. However, it's publicly available and easy to find. Well, continuing on and looking at passive intelligence sources, let's also take a look at archive.org. Now, I have trouble getting this page to load today. I don't know if they're having a heavy load, or maybe they're being hacked themselves or something. I don't know. But what archive.org and certain other websites do is it will crawl the internet for certain web pages, and it will actually kind of create a automated backup on a regular basis of these websites. And then the public can go to archive.org and look at previous versions of certain websites. And why would that be interesting to the certified ethical hacker? Well, you see, sometimes sensitive information will be released on a website, and then a corporation will realize that the wrong information has been let out, and they'll bring that down and repost more current or less revealing information. Well, archive.org might have taken kind of a snapshot of that, if you will, of that other information that was sensitive, and you can go back to their previous web pages and try to look that up. Now, I haven't actually even tried this yet, but let's take a look, for example, at CNN.com here. if I click Take Me Back, hopefully this website's working right now so that it'll reveal this to me, but it can take you back to previous versions of whatever website you put in here. And other things you might see in revealing information about these older websites is sometimes people will put up sensitive information like passwords directly embedded into HTML documents of some kind. And if they realize that, of course, they'll take it down. But the Wayback Machine there at archive.org, it might have caught that in the old form where it still had that sensitive information in it. So you might still be able to dig something up there. So let's also take a look at another source, and that would be Edgar. Well, what in the world is Edgar? That's actually a portion of the SEC website. So if I go to www.sec.gov, there's an Edgar division there. If I click on Edgar Filers over here, that reveals to me information about certain corporations. You see, they have to file like their quarterly reports, their annual reports. That has to be filed, and it's filed here with the SEC. So I can go then here to, there it is, filings over here on the left for Edgar, and I can search for company filings. So maybe I want to search for a specific company. So I'll click on companies and other filers here, and maybe I'm looking again for, a specific company. I can look it up by their company name or by their ticker symbol, and you can see the rest. So, for example, maybe I want to find something out about Ziff-Davis. You probably are somewhat familiar with them. They make a lot of computer publications and magazines and things like that. So I'll just go ahead and click on Find Companies. And this looks like them publishing and printing. So I'll click over here, and we see some information about them. We see their business address. And what we can find out here, and what we want to look for, is 10Q and 10K reports. Here's the 10K. It's the annual report. 10Q is a quarterly report. So if I want to look at their latest quarterly report, I'll just click through the links. And this will give me some information about this company. It'll tell me what their current financial status is, how much money they've been making, so to speak. I might look for key information in here further on down past these financials about what they're doing at this time, what their operations are like, if they're having any mergers or acquisitions or anything like that. I might search on those words and try to see if I can find who it is that they're merging with. Again, if the company that they're merging with has less security than Ziff-Davis, then maybe the other company would be somewhat vulnerable to whatever kind of an attack I'm trying to stage. So this just gives you an idea of how to do research for different companies. Another thing I might look for here would be regional internet registries. And for this, I'm going to take us to another whiteboard here that names the regional internet registries. And by the way, a regional internet registry is the organization that will dole out a range of IP addresses to a corporation or a university or to the government or to an ISP. So your ISP has gotten an IP address range from one of these organizations here. One of those would be APNIC and ARIN or LACNIC or RIPE. Each one of these, by the way, you need to memorize what they are, because these are important Certified Ethical Hacker exam objectives, so you need to know about these. Now, let's take a look at how we can actually put that to use. I'll give you an example right now. I just got a spam. I knew it was spam because it said that it was coming from, who was that, PayPal. And it says, PayPal, you've added an additional email address to your PayPal account. If you don't agree, by the way, look at don't there. Notice the poor grammar or spelling, or whatever you want to call it. There's a period where there should be an apostrophe. Anytime I see something with bad spelling or grammar, I know it's coming from a hacker. So that was my first clue. If you don't agree with this email, click here. Wow, okay, so I'll click there and complain that I didn't add anybody and I shouldn't be getting this email, right? But look what happens when I hover my mouse pointer over the top of this. And then look down here in the notification area here. So when I hover my mouse pointer over it, look down there at the bottom, and what does it say? It says www.google.gr, and it looks like I'm going to a Google website maybe to send an email or something. But that's not the real site. Look towards the end there, and it says http://61.19.222.212. And it's going on port 84. That's where I'm really going, is I'm going to that IP address, and it doesn't really have a named domain that's associated with it here. And notice that it ends in index.php. What they're probably trying to do is to install some kind of a Trojan horse on my computer so that when I click on that link, it will potentially attempt to install something. And it's almost comical. If you keep on reading, you see other bad grammar and stuff like that, and just kind of gives it away as not being really from PayPal. And I've seen much more elaborate ones where they use the PayPal logo and all that kind of thing, where it really looks pretty good. It looks exactly like a PayPal message. So this one's actually pretty sloppy. They probably won't get many people that fall for this. Oh, who am I kidding? There's plenty of gullible people out there. Look what happens when I go over here. Click here to log into your account. Again, it doesn't take me to PayPal by any means. You down there in the area down the lower left of the screen, you again see that it takes me to that same web page. Here's a help link. Again, all these links take me to the same exact location there. Now, the way that relates to our current discussion of the regional internet registries is I want to try to look up who this is. Now, 9 times out of 10, or even more often, this isn't really going to get you anywhere in the long run, other than if you want to complain to the ISP. So I got 61.19.22.212. I'm writing this down, and I just broke my pencil. So I'll write this down, and then we'll go to one of those internet registries to find out who this is. Now, I don't really know, I can't tell by looking at the IP address what country that originates from. So I just entered it in here in the search whois, and if it's not part of ARIN, if it's one of the other regional internet registries, it'll tell me that. So I'll search whois, and that's exactly what it's telling me here. It's telling me that APNIC is the originator of this range of IP addresses. So what I'll need to do now is to go to APNIC. And then having gone to APNIC here, I'm going to enter in again that range of that IP address where this attack is coming from, and I'll click on Go and try to find out who this is. And again, I'll probably just get an ISP here, but at least it'll give me a starting point. Alrighty, let's see. It looks like somebody from Japan, and give me some information. It's giving me the Japan Network Information Center, and gives me some phone numbers that I can call and some email addresses. So if this was an issue, they probably wouldn't respond to me just as an individual. But if my ISP was getting flooded with a lot of these spam emails, it's possible that they could do it. Or if you were working for a large corporation, you're working for Hewlett Packard or Microsoft or something like that, hopefully they would be able to get some attention and get these people to stop that. A lot of times with countries outside of the U.S., and I'm not blacklisting all countries by any means, but a lot of these countries just turn a blind eye to it and just say, well, we don't care. None of our business. Who cares what people do with our IP addresses? And a lot of times that's the case with American countries as well. I'm just saying that it gets more difficult when you try to work across country boundaries at times. In any case, in terms of the ethical hacker, if you will, how would this be useful for us in an offensive attack? Well, what we could do is we could look at the IP address for the website of the company that we're trying to attack, and then we could look them up in one of these registries, and we could find out their entire block of addresses that they have leased out. Most of the larger corporations have their own range of IP addresses. They don't have to lease them or buy them from an ISP. They have their own. Same is true of universities. So once I find out their range of addresses, then later on in my process here, I can do something like a ping sweep and try to see how many hosts will respond to an internet ping. Now, another place I might want to go is the IANA, which is the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, as you can see up here at the top. What this does is it reveals information about the top-level domains that have been registered. It doesn't really give specific information about all domains that have been registered right here unless you go to the whois service. I'll go there in just a moment, but let me also point out that it does give you other links to the IP addresses service. This is similar to what we just looked at, so if I click on that, it shows me these regional internet registries that we can go to for that information. We also see some popular links. This can be useful for the hacker, especially because certain port numbers are associated with certain web applications, for example, or certain services and that sort of thing. So if you're a little rusty on some of the port numbers, you can go here and see the commonly used port numbers and the like. Another thing you can do here is to go to the IANA whois service, as I mentioned a moment ago, and you might want to research a certain domain. So, for example, again, maybe I want to find out information about Ziff Davis here. So I'll do www.zd.com, and it's telling me that it's not going to find it. Now, let me point out something about this. Because of so many hackers out there, a lot of the whois services have been shut down so that they're not making that information available anymore. Plus, there's certain things you can do to privatize the domain and the registration information, for example. If you use Network Solutions, Inc. to register your domain, well, you can pay a little bit extra money, and it will anonymize you, so to speak, so that your information will not be available, such as your address and contact persons and stuff like that. Now, what I would do here is I probably wouldn't use whois here because this is not kind of a global whois service. Like I said, it's really mostly for the top-level domains anyway. So if I want to get a better location for this, in this case, I might just go to something like NSI, which is Network Solutions, Inc. And then once I get there, I can go into their whois service. They changed their web page, so I'm not sure where there it is down here at the bottom. Whois down here at the bottom, and I'll enter in www.zd.com and press enter, and we'll see what that gives us. And it looks like we are now getting some information here. We see some information that is from San Francisco. We see some contact information, phone number, and the like. And I can see that it's registered by markmonitor.com. It's possible that if I go to markmonitor.com that I can find more information. Now I'm just going to do this blind. I haven't done this in advance. Let's just try it out and see what happens. Again, we might not get any more information, but it might be worth looking at. Mark Monitor. And we're going to, again, do a whois for zd.com. So there's, I don't see a whois link. Oh, here it is down at the bottom. So we'll go down to the whois search down here, and we'll go to www.zd.com, press enter, and see if it gives us anything. Oh, good, they're experiencing technical difficulties. Well, remind me never to register my domain with markmonitor.com. Okay, so in any case, maybe it would have, maybe it wouldn't have, but at least it gives you a start when you go to ARIN and APNIC and these other regional internet registries, the IANA. It gives you one place to check, and then it kind of leapfrogs you from one location to the next, so you can just keep following the rabbit trail, so to speak, until you get where you need to be. So in any case, that gives you some information. Whois can be used from a number of different resources like we just saw. And then there's also a robots.txt file. What does that do? Well, a website, when it goes up, it'll probably have certain directories that it does not want the general public to know about. It might just be maintenance directories of some kind, or things that users don't need to see or that they want to conceal from people. So security by obscurity is that kind of an idea. Well, what usually they'll do is they can take a robots.txt file and they will post that on their website, and then search engines such as Yahoo, Google, and the like, they will take a look at the contents of the robots.txt file, and they can exclude any directories that are listed in robots.txt. Let's take a look at an example. Haven't actually tried this, but let's try www.microsoft. How about that one? .com, and then what was it? Robots.txt. Just type in the robots.txt file right after the name of the domain there. Oh, and we do see that there are some disallowed directories here. Now, this can be revealing information. Because what this could be saying is, hey, these are directories you don't want me to know about. Well, anytime someone says they don't want me to know about something, that's the stuff I really want to find out. Let's just try another one. How about .com, robots.txt. Let's see what Google's got up there, if anything. Yeah, see, they've got some as well. Now, granted, a lot of these will probably be pretty innocuous. Some of these can also just be distractors that they could deliberately put up there to make it look like they're trying to hide something when they're not. But a lot of times these can really be revealing, and these are directories that they don't want search engines to be able to list in their search results when people search against that company. In this nugget, we took a look at passive intelligence gathering, and this was part 1. We started off with just an overview of passive intelligence gathering. And remember that we're generally looking at public information, information that just anybody else can also look for. It's not really hacking in particular, where a lot of times we're just looking at public record. And we also took a look at several passive intelligence sources that we can use, some key websites. Again, much of it public web information. And you can also look for some more salacious information, such as those disgruntled employees, and see what kinds of things they might be revealing about their company. And then, of course, in our next nugget, we're going to continue passive intelligence with part 2, where we'll continue on with some of these passive intelligence sources and take a look, for example, at some really neat search engine techniques that we can use to really mine for information about our target. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.